You're standing on the shore of a lagoon 10,000 years ago. The sun just went down. Something's moving in the reeds. Not a goat, not a bird. Footsteps, more than one, and they're closing in, way too coordinated to be an animal. You reach for your spear. Too late. Way too late. Right here, in this exact moment, begins a story that's older than any city, older than any kingdom, older than farming itself. The story of war. Most people assume war is something civilization invented. First came kings, then borders, then armies, then battles. A neat, comforting order. Some people even assume that before all that, humans lived peacefully in small bands, with nothing worth fighting over. But is that order actually correct? What if war isn't a byproduct of progress at all, but something that already existed deep in the Stone Age, among people who had no cities, no rulers, not even a single field? And what if it goes back even further than that, past every human who has ever lived, past our own species altogether? 3 sites, and one very unexpected witness, hold the pieces of a very uncomfortable answer. Let's start with the oldest confirmed evidence on Earth. Jebel Sahaba, in modern-day Sudan, somewhere between 13,000 and 18,000 years old. Over 60 skeletons, many with arrowheads still lodged in ribs, wrists, and skulls. For decades, archaeologists assumed this was one massive battle, a single horrific day. But a fresh analysis from 2021 shows something completely different. A quarter of these skeletons carry both old, fully healed wounds and fresh, fatal ones at the same time. Which means these people weren't attacked just once. They were raided again and again over generations. Wounded, healed, and raided again. Not one war then, but a pattern repeated for centuries. Likely triggered by climate shifts along the Nile and competition for what was left. Not far south of there, at Lake Turkana in Kenya, archaeologists found a second, arguably even more brutal case, roughly 10,000 years old. 27 people. Several of them, including a woman far along in pregnancy, had their hands bound. No ritual, no proper burial. One single, brutal afternoon on the exact kind of shoreline you're standing on right now. Both sites show the same weapon mix. Blunt clubs for close-range trauma, arrows for attacks from a distance. Exactly what you'd expect from deliberate, not accidental violence. That directly contradicts the popular idea of the noble savage, who had no property, and therefore no reason for violence. The bones say otherwise. And this isn't just an African story. About 9,000 years ago, on the other side of the planet, along the Columbia River in what's now Washington State, a man we now call Kennewick Man took a spear to the hip, hard enough to drive the point deep into his pelvis and leave it there. He survived. The bone grew back around it, meaning he kept hunting and walking for years with a weapon still lodged inside him. Same rough age as Nataruk. Same kind of violence, on a continent that had zero contact with Sudan or Kenya. None of them had houses, stockpiles, or property in any modern sense. Violence existed long before anyone deliberately planted a single crop. So where does that leave us? If it's not property, what is it? Rewind even further, past every human skeleton, past our own species entirely. And the exact same behavior is already running. In Kibale National Park, Uganda, researchers spent 10 years watching a wild chimpanzee community called Ngogo. Small groups of adult males would slip quietly into a neighboring community's territory, hunting for members of the other group. If they found one and had the numbers on their side, they attacked, and often killed. Over that decade, the Ngogo males killed or fatally wounded 18 chimpanzees from neighboring groups. And here's the part that should sound familiar. Once enough rival males were dead, Ngogo didn't just retreat. They moved in and took over the neighboring territory outright, fruit trees included. No property, no farming, no stored grain to defend, just territory, calories, and a coalition willing to use lethal force to take both. This isn't a one-off either. Decades earlier, Jane Goodall's own research team documented chimpanzees at Gombe, Tanzania, hunting down and killing every male from a rival group over 4 years. A conflict known as the Gombe Chimpanzee War. Biologists call this the imbalance of power strategy. Attack only when the numbers favor you. Chimpanzees and humans are, as far as we know, the only two species that reliably do this, which means this exact playbook. Gang up, wait for the numbers, then take what isn't yours. Was already running in whatever ancestor we share with chimpanzees, millions of years before a single human, farm, or word for property existed. Fast forward, and the same playbook gets bigger stakes. About 1,200 years ago in Ridges Basin, Colorado, at least 35 people in an early farming village were killed. Their remains scattered across the site, with clear signs of deliberate violence. Isotope tests show the victims were local, not outsiders, ruling out a foreign invasion in favor of violence between neighbors. 500 years later, at Crow Creek, South Dakota, the same story arrives at a much larger scale. At least 486 people killed in a single coordinated attack on a village that had already built defensive walls in anticipation of exactly this. Different tools, different century, same ancient math, more people, more stored food, more worth fighting over. So the fighting simply got organized to match. And here's the real twist. We like to picture war as a consequence of civilization, arriving alongside kings, empires, progress, alongside us, the supposedly civilized ones, far removed from some peaceful, romanticized past. But the evidence doesn't just push that timeline back a few thousand years. It pushes it back past our own species entirely. The exact playbook underneath war, coalitions, numbers, taking what belongs to someone else, was already running in a common ancestor we shared with chimpanzees, long before there was a Homo sapiens to blame it on. Civilization didn't invent this. Neither did our species. Even the concept of property came too late to take the blame. Civilization just gave it fortifications, planning, and an economic logic wherever people owned something worth defending. The actual impulse, the fear in the dark, the reach for the spear the instant something moves in the reeds, that's not a human invention at all. It's older than humans. But there's a second half to this story that bones alone can't show. The same species capable of everything you just heard is also, by far, the most cooperative species on the planet. Humans work alongside complete strangers, share resources with people they'll never meet again, and build things, hospitals, water systems, power grids, that no chimpanzee troop could ever attempt. Researchers who study this call it one of the strangest traits in nature. Reliably helping people, you have no genetic reason to help at all, and that capacity seems to be doing measurable work. By widely cited estimates, roughly 15% of people in prehistoric stateless societies died of violent death. Today, the global death rate from war sits at a small fraction of 1%. Not because the old impulse vanished, it's still there, but because humans built something chimpanzees never did. Ways to cooperate across group lines, not just within them. The oldest instinct we have didn't disappear. We just got better at building things strong enough to hold it back. So you're standing on the shore of that same lagoon again, 10,000 years ago. Those footsteps in the reeds, that wasn't just you. That was the people of Jebel Sahaba too, and half a world away. The people of Ridges Basin and Crow Creek, and further back, in a forest with no humans in it yet. 13,000 years of human history, and millions more before that, all running on the exact same instinct. This was never an isolated case, and it was never even just a human problem. This was the beginning of everything that's followed since, all the way up to you watching right now.